I made falafel
Yeah.
for the first time.
Falafel.
Yeah, I've never made falafel before.
We're on air. That was pretty quick. Hello. Welcome to Behind the Scenes of AV Rant, episode 641.
41, yeah.
641, yeah. This is the behind the scenes version that you're looking at if you're seeing this introduction or watching live. So, yeah, be forewarned. We're just using Google Hangouts still, so there might be dropouts or whatever. Audio quality might glitch. Who knows what might happen in the world of live Google Hangouts. And we're going to be talking about some images which won't show up in the video feed, but if you're watching this behind the scenes version, down there in the show notes with the little show more linky thing, you click that and there's a link in there that says pictures shown in this episode. It'll take you over to Flickr and you can follow along with the images there. So that's a workaround. That's a way to still see what we're talking about, even live, but you have to piece it together. You have to go by the clues. Should show up in the order that they're shown. Yeah, that's it. You've been warned. Tom can start when he pleases.
Yeah. All right. Let's see where we're at here. Time-wise, around a minute 40. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. What was that, Tom? You're about to say something.
I'm already futzing with my headphones. I'm like, stop touching your face. You're only like showing from like the shoulder up, and you can't see. I'm always like touching my face.
Everything is discombobulated.
I am a mess.
Saying 1, 2, 3 record and not actually pressing the record button because you're about to clack and click and say pop.
The minute that we started this podcast, I realized I have to pee. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna
hold it for 2 hours, man. That's what's gonna happen.
No, we get to talk about.
I saw Endgame on Thursday night. So no spoilers from me whatsoever.
Because you would be kicked off this podcast. I would never speak to you again as a human being.
I
told my children that because my middle son wants to go see it on Saturday with some of his friends. I told him that if he came home and spoiled even the littlest thing, he would be sleeping in the tent in the backyard until I saw the movie.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would just say my impression was I thought the ending was very strong. So strong, in fact, that I think it elevated the rest of the movie, which there were moments in there where I was kind of like, all right, it didn't really need to go on this long. But no, the ending is superb in my opinion, and it makes it all worthwhile. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, kind of basically.
Okay.
That the end is real good.
The end is real good, and I feel like the movie as a whole is like a tribute.
Yeah,
you know, I think the people who made this movie,
it's like a victory lap.
It is. Well, I don't even know. I think a tribute is exactly what it is, because I think the people who made this movie really love these characters, possibly more than I do. And therefore, they're kind of like, let's pay tribute to the past 10, 11 years and the past 21 movies that came before this one. And if there's an idea or a scene that we want to see up there, then we're going to do it, because by golly, this is it. This is Endgame, so let's do it now. That's kind of the way I felt about it.
I was going to share with you an email, and I think I'll do it off the air. I get these emails all the time from people who are like, "Hey, wouldn't you love it if we have an article that's like one of your articles, and therefore you should cross-link us, and we'll even give you a little bit of money if you do it."
Or replace the link in this article from 8 years ago with our link.
It wasn't 8; it was 9.
Okay,
it was AVRant number 201.
Mm-hmm.
He wants me to go back.
All the traffic on that we must
get.
Yes.
And he says, and I'll even link you up on our website so that, our 25,000 followers will come over there. I'm like, if even one of your stupid followers came over and listened to episode 201, which was Senior 2010, I'm not sure they would be getting the information that you think they would be getting. But
they'd be like, these guys are out of date. They are not up on current events.
I'm going to go on YouTube and send an angry comment about it.
That's right.
Oh, wait a second. YouTube
not on our channel anymore.
Sucks to be you.
More important than everything else, I only had time to watch one episode of the second season of She-Ra, which is only 7 episodes long in total, so I hope they're going to do the whole DreamWorks animation thing where they bring out like a new season every 8 months like they did with Voltron, because that was all right. I didn't mind that.
I stopped watching Voltron, but Voltron was okay, the ones I watched.
Yeah. Oh, it was real good. Apparently, I haven't gotten to the end. Apparently, people didn't like the way it ended, but Whatevs.
I like the Castlevania cartoon on Netflix too.
Okay. I haven't watched that. There's too much to watch, man.
There is too much to watch.
Speaking of which, too much to get to as well. Let's crack on.
That's not that much to get to.
There's tons to get to.
I'm just skip most of these questions anyway. So I'm just say this. Well, I've a new policy. You bore me. That's not true.
No, we would never do that.
We would
first in, first out. That's how it works around here.
Ish. Yeah. AV Rant, your podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. We are never bored by you. I was going to say we're sometimes annoyed by you, but that's not actually true either. I don't think I've ever been annoyed by a question.
No. All the questions we get are like perfectly reasonable, good questions.
Well, I mean, they all come from a good place. They all come from a place of, and it's so, I think one of the cute, I don't want to say cute, like their children, like my listeners are children and I'm like this adult or whatever, but I kind of attribute it to my kids. But, everybody, when they write their question, they're like, I know, I want you to know that I know these things that you're going to say anyways. Yes. I'm like, yeah, guess what? We're still going to say them.
Yes, we are.
It's going to happen.
Bears repeating. Just so we can make sense of what we're saying in our own heads,
right.
If nothing else.
All the questions we get are like legitimately, honest questions. And that's really all I care about. I don't care that you don't know something or you don't understand something.
Heavens no, that's the whole point.
That's the whole point of the podcast. I care that you ask it I'm trying to, me and my kids are at war right now because dad has instituted a politeness policy. Oh yeah, it's not going well. It's not going well.
Must lead by example on that, Tom.
I do.
Must lead by example.
I do. My son's like, you don't say please every time either, Dad. I'm like, when I have to remind you to do the thing that I have reminded you to do for the last 6 months, I don't say please anymore. You find something that you've reminded me to do 6 months in a row, and then you can get off the pleases too. Until then, you're on pleases. All right, this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com. Leave a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. We have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/AVRant, where you can watch us but not comment because YouTube sucks.
Yep.
It's a necessary evil. It's actually not even a necessary evil. We only do it because it's convenient.
Now, I'm looking at our views and I'm like, there must be people who listen to this podcast who have literally never, ever seen one of our videos.
There's thousands of them.
You got to check it out. You got to check it out just once, youtube.com/AVRant. Come check it out.
I don't know that I would want to look at me.
Oh, I'm not you. That. Heavens no, not for that. Nobody looking at us. Well, that's probably why. They probably did see a screenshot at one point and they're like, well, we don't need any of that. I'm getting all the audio content regardless.
So. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We try to describe things as best we can, but you want to contact Rob directly, it's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @firstreflect. I'm Tom @avrant.com. And Twitter is @avrant_Tom. Thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to patreon.com/AVRantPodcast. And sign up to be a continuing sponsor, subscriber. I don't know what you call it. Whatever Patreon is.
Be a patron. Yes.
Be a patron. Every month, some money comes from you and goes to us.
That's right. Automatically.
So it's little as $1, as much as infinity. So we've got 79 patrons. I want to thank all of you guys and gals.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up. And thanks very much to our 79 patrons over there.
And if you can't support us financially, that's fine. Just tell us how you did support us in some other way, even if it's just talking this up to a friend or something like that. Just let us know that your friend was Bill Gates, because that'd be awesome. And we'll mention you. So Johnny talked us up to RBH and Accessories for Less when he bought some EPSB headphones from RBH and a Denon X3400H from Accessories for Less. So thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny, that's great. Congrats on those purchases, and thanks for talking us up to RBH and Accessories for Less.
And Martin Googled for me and let me know that Season 4 of The Expanse has wrapped up shooting after being saved by Amazon Prime Video when Sci-Fi canceled it, because Sci-Fi absolutely loves to get a show popular and then cancel it.
They dropped the ball on that thing. That was weird.
Dude, that show is so good. It's not my favorite show of all time. I mean, it's not the sort of thing I'm going to watch 1,000 times over. And it's not something that I like because it ticks all of the buttons for me. But it was just well made. The special effects were really good the first season and quite good all the rest of the seasons. I just don't know. And the acting was all pretty decent too. So I mean, I had Thomas Jane on there, man. He was the Punisher. But anyways, thank you, Martin, for letting me know that that will be airing this summer.
You did wonder about it aloud last episode, so Martin was listening, and thank you for chiming in, Martin. And yeah, if anyone would like to donate to the podcast in a one-time donation, they don't want to sign up for an automatic recurring thing over at Patreon, you can just come to our website, avrant.com, and over on the right-hand side, it says Support AV Rant, and there's a picture of a cup of coffee, and that'll take you to PayPal, where you can use a credit card or your PayPal account to send us a one-time donation if you'd like to do so.
That's right. Let's get some news here. Back at CEDIA, which is 2019, not, or 2018, not.
Yes, it would have been. Yeah. CEDIA would have been 2018, end of 2018. Yeah.
Not 2010, when this dude wants me to link to him. It's so. The thing was, Rob, it's his most recent emails. Sorry to annoy you again. I promise this is your last email, but you had a chance to take a look at this. And I looked to the next.
Well, I've had dozens of those at the question at AVRant web.
Oh yeah, and the next one
ignore them. I junk
was just a quick follow up to make sure you got this and confirm I'm a real person, not some automated email robot. And then I scrolled down. And I'm like, wait a second. If you were a real person, why would you want this linkage to happen?
Because
it's so stupid.
There's no way that an automated system could possibly write those words. Clearly. It's like, oh, a police officer has to tell you they're a police officer if you ask them.
That's
also
true.
Totally false.
That's internet. That's internet laws. That's the law of the internet. It's a gentleman's code, because everyone on the internet is a gentleman or a lady, and not a troll, which is never been a thing. In the news, back at CEDIA, JBL announced a new entry-level speaker series, a JBL Stage series, including models ranging from their $200 a pair satellites up to $900 a pair towers. There's a $250 pair bookshelf, 3 tower models, and 2 3 tower models? Anyways, and 2 center models, $250 each for the centers, I guess. There's 2 and they're both $250?
They're both $250. They're just different form factors.
Okay. Including a low profile center that's only 4 inches tall and uses 6 3-inch drivers to still deliver similar extension and output as the rest of the series. Very positive reviews are coming out now, and there's a lot of trickle down design from JBL's flagship M2 monitors, particularly the compression tweeter housed in a waveguide that seems to be retaining the excellent imaging and wide even dispersion that JBL says they're aiming for. So white drivers.
Yep. That's kind of a hallmark of JBL designs. A lot of people who like older JBL speakers are happy to see those white drivers make their way back. But yes, the waveguide on this compression tweeter that they're using, that is definitely trickled down from the flagship M2s, which I'm a big fan of the M2 speakers. So I love seeing that technology make it all the way down to what is now their entry-level series of speakers. And I'm happy to see JBL bringing out a highly well-reviewed product with what certainly outwardly appears to be a very good design to me. These are using like 2.5-way crossovers, so there's nothing chintzy or simple about the crossovers that are inside. These are braced cabinets. They actually have separate enclosures for each woofer and that, so they're not cheaping out on any of this. They're just throwing their considerable heft in the industry around to hit these types of price points with this type of engineering, and I'm happy to see it because I've wanted to be enthusiastic about JBL speakers for a long time. The research that Harman does is second to none, and yet somehow a lot of that has never made it into the regular consumer JBL brand. JBL Synthesis, of course, always had this stuff, but the regular consumer JBL brands seem to not have a ton of that research make it into their actual products. Now they do, and I love to see that.
This is a really good solution for people who are either remote and have a hard time getting access.
These you will be able to find in big box stores.
Yeah, these will be everywhere. On top of that, or people who are allergic to mail order and sending things back, they don't want to give out their credit card numbers or whatever. This is a good thing, and I really actually taking a look at this long thin center. I mean, a lot of people would look at that and say, wait a second, the drivers are different sizes. You know that the sound doesn't care, right?
And the driver being smaller isn't a huge problem. Like, it's going to cause less wave interference. It's just you need the sheer surface area, but that's why they used a whole bunch of them, because they're small.
And I like that. I like that. They've got, instead of having one driver on each side of the tweeter, they have 3. And it's almost like not like a line array, but it's sort of, and it makes it very, very thin. And this is a good solution for a lot of people who are trying to put their center channel on the little desk.
That's
on
right.
on the table
so
right in front
many
of their
TVs where there's not enough space for a even 6-inch tall center speaker to fit anymore. You have these very slim sound bars if you're going to use a sound bar, and now this is a center speaker solution that'll work for that type of situation. I like it, JBL. I like it.
Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to like the smallest of all of these things, probably. Maybe that mid-level tower. The big one looks...
Well, the smallest of the towers has the exact same driver complement as the regular-sized center.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where those match up.
It looks like the same drivers in the medium one, though, too.
Those are a little bit larger, a little bit bigger diameter. Yeah.
So Aperion has a new speaker series that will start shipping in July. The Aperion Novus series fits in between their Intimus and their Varus series. Price-wise, that's a bookshelf, a center, a tower, and the Aperion's first upward-firing Atmos module, which can also be wall or ceiling mounted. It's almost like SVS freaking pioneered that.
It is quite similar. I mean, I'm happy to see multiple companies who have these Atmos modules. They're like, well, you know what? Instead of just saying the only thing you can do with this is put it on top of an existing speaker and have it fire upward, they're like, yeah, there's really no reason why you can't wall mount this thing or ceiling mount this thing and have it just play directly, and just don't say in your AV receiver that it's an Atmos enabled speaker, so that head related transfer function EQ is not applied to it if you wall mount it or ceiling mount it. So take your pick. It's very versatile.
The problem that Aperion's always had is the top of their speakers are rounded. So you're completely hosed if you want to add an Atmos module.
These ones
to it
clearly not. They clearly have images of the upward firing version of it on top of the flat topped tower speaker. So that is something you can definitely do. I don't know why this center speaker is pushed way back, but I also see there are no speaker wires in any of these. So clearly this was set up by someone who isn't actually using them. But promo images.
So the front faces of all the speakers are raked back, and the tower and bookshelves have front slot ports. Tweeter output can be slightly adjusted, and white is a standard finish in addition to black, which is, of course, you're going to have black in there. So they have the tweeter above a mid range on their centers channel.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
something we like to see. It looks like the towers have small outriggers, which is similar to what they have. In their Varus series. I mean, aesthetically, I don't love these. To be honest with you,
I quite like the looks of these. To be,
they're
to my liking.
That's fine, but I've never.
We're allowed to have different taste.
Yeah, you're allowed to be wrong. The white ones look a little bit better because I don't like that silver thing around the tweeter. I think I've always been not a fan of that. And
design choices.
That slot port in the front of the tower speaker is just begging for some kid to shove a quarter in it.
Yeah. That
not a fan of that.
Yeah, piece of paper, coins, many things could end up inside of that front slot port. And I don't have the image where they showed the grill, but the grill only covers the drivers, not the ports.
Okay. Yeah. All right, some comments from our listeners. Jeremy Porter from Porter Edwards, Austin Hi-Fi, shared a sneak peek photo of the first speaker they'll be selling to the public in about 6 months. Each cabinet is handmade with components that took an unexpected 3 years to source and design. It takes, well...
He was thinking it would take this would be a year-long project to design and start making these. It ended up being 3 years.
Yeah. The problem, and for those of you that aren't speaker designers or whatever, I am, of course, not a speaker designer as well, but I have spent some time talking with speaker designers, and their biggest headache is not finding a tweeter that they like or a driver that they like. Their problem is finding a driver that they like that when they order 100 of them, they're all the same.
Yes,
that's the big problem.
And mostly I've heard that most of the cost and time ends up being the cabinets. Yeah. That seems to be a common thread as well.
So the cabinets So Jeremy was excited to show off their prototype of Xpona this year. So it's a very
angular, I would say.
Yeah,
many
it looks
angles
if the 80s could be made into a speaker, this would be it to me. And I don't say that in a bad way. It looks like it has a slot port, but it's sort of got a cut in down there and stuff like that. It looks like up front was it a concentric tweeter, or is that just a tweeter with
looks like, that's got to be a concentric design of some type.
With a big old woofer in it. So I don't know how big these things are. I mean, it's hard to really tell.
They look sizable.
They do look sizable.
They look sizable.
I'm hoping that's a concentric driver, because if that's just a tweeter running cross into what looks like an 8-inch woofer, I would be concerned about your crossover.
I think that's bigger than an 8-inch woofer, to be honest.
It could very well be. It looks like it could be. It's very hard to tell. But
that could be a 12, to be honest.
I tell you what, you got really? I don't know about 12.
It could be 10. A 12 with that could be like an 8-inch around what looks like the tweeter grill.
Could be.
Yeah. Could be. I think it's that type of
size. Very interesting looking design. If you order these speakers, I have no idea how much they cost. You would definitely be the only person that has a speaker that looks like this, because they actually resemble more to me of Wilson Audio.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're familiar with them, their speakers cost $750,000. So yeah, they have a similar look to me as those, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. So good luck with those, man. I'd love to hear them someday.
For sure.
Graham says, according to lots of people complaining online. People complain online?
They did. In a shocking twist, they did, Tom.
I thought online was where we as a society got together to support each other and help each other learn from our combined knowledge. Isn't that what the internet is for? It's like the repository of all things good in society? No? There's complaints?
There were.
Who would have guessed? Apparently last night's Game of Thrones was too dark. Gizmodo wrote up an article in which they touch upon color grading and mastering, explaining how even on their calibrated OLED in a dark room, things still crushed into muddy gray black until they abandoned the PS View streaming version they were watching on for a much more stable and higher bit rate stream from HBO Now. But the author went on to say that they still hold the opinion that the makers of Game of Thrones messed up in this case, because they should have anticipated that most people are watching on uncalibrated TVs that aren't as good as OLEDs, in rooms that aren't dim or dark, or in using streaming services that are being slammed while millions of people all try to stream the same show at the same time. Graham would like us to discuss. I'm not talking about Game of Thrones, because I don't.
Not the show itself. I mean, apparently the entire episode, and especially the gigantic battle that was taking place, all shot in the dark.
Spoiler!
In fact, the cinematographer went on record saying that they tried to shoot as much as possible in just natural light with, the current digital cameras that are very good at capturing low light, but basically didn't have traditional television or movie, lighting going on, just the actual light that was there in the dark. That's what they were shooting in. So, I mean, without question, it was a very dark episode. I didn't watch it live or anything like that, but I, saw some of the images in that. But there were people who were like, there were plenty of people who said, I watched this on my set at home and it was totally fine. And then there were plenty of people who saw
everybody with vivid mode. Go on.
There was that. There's larger screenings than that were going on who were like, yeah, it was okay. That wasn't the problem. It seemed to mostly be people who were streaming it as opposed to watching it on their cable provider. So the compression seems to have entered into the picture here as well. But, I mean, I saw one person, the guy who runs IGN, and that he's like, yeah, seeing all these complaints, I just want to go to everyone's house and calibrate their TV for them, because it is fine if your television is calibrated.
Well, there's going to be that for sure. Yeah. And, to me, it's like, if you're going to stream, you got to be willing to put up with some of this stuff. It's going to happen. You're going to be sitting there watching whatever movie you're watching, and there's going to be a hiccup as,
But I think part of it is that people see the thing that says this is streaming in 4K or this is streaming in HD, and most people are not aware of things like higher compression rates and lower bit rates and stuff. That doesn't enter. They just see HD or 4K, and they're just expecting a certain level of quality from that alone. Well, honestly, the way things are marketed, I can't blame anyone.
I can't blame them for that either. Yeah. But that's also it's like anything else. People, if you want to read the specs on the car, and you're going to expect a car or a receiver or a TV or a house, even really, if you just read what it says on the and just take it at face value without knowing what some of those numbers mean, it's not going to, you're not going to have the depth of knowledge. You're just you're basing a lot of that on assumptions that you have not researched and don't know what they really mean. So, I mean, there's that. I
But
think
what
that
about the notion that the people making the content ought to make assumptions about what the majority of people's setup is like, that it isn't properly calibrated, and you should therefore master your content in such a way that it'll, be visible to people whose televisions are not properly
no,
calibrated?
you
I
see,
mean,
I do not
yeah,
agree with that in any way,
yeah.
shape, or
Do we
form.
start going down that
No,
road?
we don't start I mean, okay, so what you do is what you do when you master audio, right? You master the audio with with in high fidelity with
Mm-hmm.
your best headphones or your best speakers or whatever. And then after you're like, okay, it sounds great. Then you take a pair of crappy or mass market headphones or speakers
Mm-hmm.
and you listen to it on that. And that's what they do. They have with those JBL
They
speakers, the
absolutely do.
Sony
The
headphones, or
Yamahas, the really
Yamahas.
ancient
Yeah,
Yamahas before Yamaha knew how to make good speakers.
that's right.
They're like still
And
around.
they're like, okay, how's it sound on this? Is there anything glaringly wrong with it?
Right.
Right? Is there anything really off base? And they're like, nah, it's fine. Whatever. Maybe I'll bump the bass up a little bit, just
Yeah.
tweak the bass or something like that up a little bit. But you don't start with them and then listen to the high fidelity stuff and go.
But the thing is, on the video side, we don't do that. We don't do the translatability part of it, of watching it back on a poorly calibrated TV. They have what they consider to be their consumer television test is like an LG or Panasonic OLED.
Right.
Like, this is a consumer TV that somebody could feasibly have at home, but that is also calibrated, not as specifically and precisely as their mastering monitor, but it's still way closer to a mastering monitor than what most people actually have at home.
I'm sorry, but speakers are like speakers, and specifically surround sound is so much easier for somebody to really screw it up. A TV is not that hard. You face it towards you, you turn it on, and you change the settings from vivid to something else. Now, if you don't change the settings from vivid to something else, it's unlikely that you'll be staring at the back of the TV. You will be staring at the front of the TV. There will be a picture coming out of it. It's not that hard to figure that part out. And frankly, if all they do is they turn on the OLED and leave it in vivid mode, or change look at it in the different modes. Well, I think that's more than enough.
I did see one other person on Twitter that I follow who was like, "Oh, I finally discovered what the gamma control on my TV is for," and I'm like, "Well, there you go."
Force people to learn, but
that's right.
This is more of a it shouldn't be a complaint about how they're mastering things. It should be a complaint to the streaming services and compression.
There's
that's where the complaint should be headed. That's where the anger should be at, not at the people. Now, the fact that they were shooting in normal light and everything else, that's a design choice. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that whatsoever. When they start putting out movies in vertical telephone, picture size, that's when I'm gonna be like, man, screw this amount. But if they decide they're gonna shoot it in whatever low light or whatever, it's fine, whatever. That's what you chose. I'm sure you had some sort of really hoity-toity reason for doing it that way, but if I don't like it, I just won't watch your movie. There's problems with Dredd. If you go and watch Dredd, there's scenes of that movie that were like the blacks are absolutely crushed. All over the place. It's grainy practically, and you could just see that somebody was like, I know somebody in that editing room is going, we don't have a better shot than this. This is what we've got. They're like, not only this is what we got, but we out of money, Hoss. We out.
It was like the story Vince Gilligan told about when they were shooting one of those episodes of Better Call Saul, and they were using, at the time, it was fairly new to them, the digital cameras that can shoot in super low light. And they said they were pulling their hair out because every time they shot this scene and then watched it back on their monitors, they're like, there's this red cast, this red hue on everybody's face. There's like a nighttime scene out in a train yard, and like there's this red cast, and they're like, is there something wrong with the camera? Is there something we can do with the light? And there's always this red cast. And then somebody finally figured out, they're like, it was the little LED on the front of the camera itself to let you know it's recording.
It was shining on people.
It was picking up that reflecting off people's faces because that's how sensitive it is.
Oh, wow.
They're like, crazy. Well, a little bit of electrical tape solved that problem, but it wasn't something they were used to in shooting movies and TVs. So,
right. All right, let's get to these questions here. David is still in the process of deciding on his forever or at least long-term speakers. After following our advice about letting his audition candidates just play even while he isn't critically listening, and then noting when what he misses in the sound by its absence as much as any characteristics that stand out by their presence. He has decided to keep the KEF R series speakers for the time being, has returned the Ascend Sierra 2 speakers, and he's at peace with that decision. That's fantastic, because the R series, now price difference is pretty big there, or
no, not at retail.
That's a reference,
I mean,
right?
he got his R series from accessories for less, so in his case, they were less expensive than the Sierra 2s.
Right.
But regularly, they're not very far apart at all.
Yeah. Okay. So since we mentioned the Focal Electra B series as another potential candidate, David booked a time at a local high-end dealer to audition some Focal speakers at their location. Listening room was treated, but had a much more diffusion and absorption, so it wasn't super close match to David's room as far as acoustics go. But he's quite sure the Focal speakers are not his favorites either. The dealer didn't have the Electra B series on hand for audition, but they did have their even higher end Sopra series, which is the one that is antibacterial if you touch it, which is the same beryllium tweeter and W cone woofer. Okay, he knew the detail and clarity that Rob talked about, but he found himself missing the sound of the KEF R series. The dealer was quite familiar with KEF and said that KEF speakers have some unique characteristics, and that if David really likes them, he probably isn't going to favor any other speakers over them. The dealer suggested maybe trying some higher end JBL speakers, but other than that, nothing much is drawing David away from the KEFs. So that pretty much just leaves RBH on David's mind. At this point, he's nearing the end of the window, the return window on the KEF R series speakers. Do we think he should forget about RBH now, or just move forward with completing his KEF setup? Will the RBH be so worthwhile that he should go past the KEF return window? You should definitely not go past the KEF return window. I don't think so. As much as Rob loves Ascend,
yes,
and he loves his Sierra 2s, and I love RBH. If you've compared the KEFs to Focal, and you've compared the KEFs to Ascend, and you prefer KEF, I am 100% on board with you saying, RBH. Thanks anyways. We're done with our interviews for now.
And both of us, Tom and I, very much like KEF, and that R series is fantastic. Neither of us is going to have anything to say about, you could have possibly made the wrong quote unquote choice there. No, both of us would be like, you got real good speakers, man.
Well, not only that, but you did your due diligence. And this is one of the things I when we talk about like auditioning all these speakers and stuff like that, you run out of time because you can't like take a week off of work to do this crap. You can't. It takes time to do it.
Trying to pay a bunch of return shipping costs, you run out of money. Where you're like, at some point, I'm not going to be able to afford to keep any of these because I'm paying so much in the audition process.
You've done enough due diligence that I feel very confident with your decision to keep the KEFs. So I would keep the KEFs absolutely 100%. No regrets. I would never think that I would go to I had missed out on RBH. I would not think that at all.
And in your case, you could even, after you bought them, go out and read reviews about the KEF R series, because you're not going to find any telling you that they're bad speakers. So there will be no doubt, even if you do that to yourself.
Yeah, don't do that, though. If he does go past the return window, which he's not going to do because he's going to keep them, whether that's due to waiting to heal RBH speakers or due to wanting to audition other speakers, how difficult do we think it would be to sell the KEF R series bookshelf speakers privately? It'd be easy to sell them privately as long as you price them low enough. So I would, why lose that money? I think just keep the speakers and you're fine.
I think so. I mean, obviously, for however much longer you live on this planet, it is not utterly impossible that there could be another speaker out there that you prefer even more. But no, these are fantastic. I don't see any reason to torture yourself any further. You know that you like them. You know that when you took them away and listened to something else that you also thought was very good, but you found yourself missing the KEFs. I'm like, that's it. That's everything. Because to me, that's exactly what made me settle on Ascend in my case. And, I don't think he'd turn around and say I'm insane for liking those. It's just a little bit different preferences and different rooms and maybe different content that we listen to as well. All types of things can factor into that. I think you've made a great decision here. I think
you have to spend significantly more money to find a speaker you're going to like.
Right.
Enough more that you would feel like you should have, gone with these other ones.
Right.
And that's not in the cards right now, so don't worry about it. All these speakers that are about the same price point, you find one of them that you like better than most of the other ones, you're good. Just stick with that. I mean, it's literally, it's not even splitting hairs at that point. It's the same hair.
Yeah, right along those lines. The last thing I was going to say was that, like when Lee was on, he made a good suggestion, which is that if you only have one or maybe not even one shop around where you can go and audition some speakers that aren't just found in a big box retailer, that maybe you make a weekend of it sometime. Go to a larger city, that's a bit far. It wouldn't be something you just drive to normally, but you make a weekend out of it. You go someplace with a place that has more shops. And I was saying maybe legacy speakers, which would be more expensive.
Yeah.
The type you'd be looking at would be more expensive than what you got. So not for really that purpose, but just, he was like, I want to hear something with a folded ribbon tweeter and that. I'm like, okay, there's nothing better that you could really go to for that experience than finding a legacy audio dealer and hearing some legacy audio speakers. So that would be the last thing I would point you towards, but not really seriously considering them because they'd be considerably more expensive.
Yeah. Greg asks, how far off the ground does the center channel speaker really need to be? Well, if you're M&K speakers, it can be on the ground because that's the way they used to make them. And not only their center channels, but like all 3 front speakers would be on the ground.
Little angles built in.
On the regular. You just throw them right up there at the front wall and you're good to go. So, all right. Greg's budget won't allow for an acoustically transparent projection screen, but he still wants the largest screen that will fit, given his ceiling height and the vertical offset. The projector he plans to purchase, which is the BenQ HT 3550. He's worked out the figures, and with the 135-inch screen size, he would like to use a center speaker will only be a little over 6 inches off the ground. Is it okay? Would simply tilting the center so that it's aiming up a bit and pointed at his seated ear height be enough? Yeah, it'll be fine. That's what I would do. That's what everybody does, actually.
I'm not typically a fan of like literally having your center speaker on the floor because you do get a little bit of a weird ground plane bounce at that point.
I mean,
unless you are also have your head down on the floor to mitigate that like you would be if you're measuring outdoors and doing a ground plane measurement. I'm not a fan of having it right on the ground, but you're not. You've got some distance, 6 inches. Normally I'd like to have like a 12-inch stand.
If you were going to be super neurotic about it, you could take like a panel, like an acoustic panel, and just put it at that first reflection point on the
floor in front of it. Yeah,
you could do that.
You could.
I wouldn't because that's just way too much trouble.
Some people are gonna be like, "Why is that thing lying on the ground up there?" What?
Well, something. But who cares? It's gonna be dark in the room anyways. So,
but do tilt it so that it is aiming. Don't just have it firing straight forward at your, shins. Would it even reach your knees at that height? Your shins?
6 inches? No, it's going right into your shins. I was shooting underneath the recliner. As you're reclined up.
That's right. Recline goes up, and the sound goes under your chair.
The biggest issue would be is if you had multiple rows of seats. But the second row of seats is usually for people you don't like anyway. So who cares about them? Kids.
do the thing. Make sure it's tilted at your face, but that's okay. It is a slight compromise, I would say, but it's okay. It's not something that's going to drastically.
And your brain is going to to put that sound in the middle of that screen. It is even when that you're looking at the speaker, it still sounds like it's coming from the character's mouth. You just know it. So if you went with a 120-inch screen, the center would be 9 inches off the floor instead of 6 inches. Would those extra inches make such an audible difference that it'd be worth sacrificing that much screen size? I don't think so. Honestly, no, I don't think so. No. But I would be more worried about because you're not telling us anything else. So, you have a 135-inch screen size. You're like, this is as big as it could possibly get in here. I'm going to sit 5 feet away. Well, then now we've got a different issue. And it's not where your center channel is. It's how close you're sitting to the screen. So, do not get the biggest screen that will fit because it is the biggest screen that will fit. Get the biggest screen that gives you the right viewing angle for you. And
if you are sitting 12 feet away, 135 is darn nice. And you very well might be sitting 12 feet away. So,
yeah. And we've talked about this many times before, but one of the ways that you can do this is when you go to the movie theater, especially if they have a tiled roof. Count the number of tiles from above you all the way to the screen and the number of tiles across the screen. That's the ratio you like, wherever you're sitting, and not the screen itself, but the image, image. So just keep that in mind. And if that's what you want to do. Anaheim Josh has been following our advice and putting together his surround sound system. where gaming is a priority and his theater area is just in the corner of a larger room. This is the guy we keep talking off the ledge, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's Josh.
He's sitting. He should ledge Josh. He's sitting 7 feet away from his display and front speakers. We talked him down from an 82-inch edge-lit TV to a 75-inch full-array local dimming Samsung QLED, which he's loving. We got him to stick with an SVS SB3000 subwoofer. And we convinced him that sticking with his existing bookshelf front speakers is fine while adding new in-ceiling surround speakers, since invisible in-ceiling surrounds are the only option in his case. He's feeling good about his setup, but he's got friends who are also in the home theater, and they've been giving him some constructive criticism about his decision to continue using his tiny bookshelf speakers as his main left and right, even though his Silverline SR15s are a typical 1-inch tweeter with a 6.5-inch woofer design. These friends contend that only large tower speakers will do when it comes to home theater. So, Josh, what's our take? Your friends are wrong and mean. I do not like them, and they can take their opinions and shove them. That's my response. It's straight up. Every word that came out of their mouth was wrong, and it did not come from a place of help. I don't think it came from, we read it on the internet and we spent money on towers, and therefore you should have to spend money on towers too.
There are many things that are considered knowledge in the audio world, and
an apple a day keeps a doctor away is also the same type of knowledge as what you are getting right now. Neither true nor helpful. But Tom
and I went through all these stages of
the stages of
stuff.
Excuse me, speaker believing. I mean, we've all been there. You know, Harman Kardons have real watts.
I mean, you'll see the stuff written so frequently in multiple different places by different authors who all seem very, very knowledgeable, and it's just taken for granted, some of this stuff.
A lot of it, and that's why. That's why the forums have always been to us. I mean, that's why we started doing the Q&A part of this. At first, it was a little bit of Q&A, and then at first it was deep dives, and then it was Q&A, a little bit of Q&A, and then it was nothing but Q&A because literally honestly, dude, all we're doing is refuting the internet. That's all we're doing on this podcast.
Often,
is refuting
I wouldn't say that's all we're ever doing. But very often we are,
We are usually the voice of reason to what you'll get on the internet, which is people parroting things that they've read 1,000 times.
Although I would have to say quite a bit of what we're passing along does come from Harman's research. So
but that's research.
I have to give credit there. Yep.
Well, I mean, we do give credit, but okay, so
and it's not stopping them from putting out big tower speakers, is it?
No, it's not, because big tower speakers sell. I mean, why do you think JBL has got those 3 different tower speakers? Because people believe that tower speakers have to be had for certain types of.
Yep. I do like that JBL's $10,000 each flagships, though, are a 2-way speaker. I do like that.
So let's get back to this. One argument his friends are making is that the tower speakers allowed them to set the crossover frequency to their subwoofers lower at 45 hertz instead of 80 hertz. They say that is better quality. Nope. But Josh is arguing that properly set up subwoofers will produce better bass up to at least 80 hertz. So what's the point of rolling it off lower and having the front speakers play down to 45? Can we help settle that part of their debate? Well, we've talked about it 100,000 times on this podcast, but it's worth repeating.
Because this is definitely one of these common knowledge beliefs that is so regularly held, and by people I really, really respect are still saying this type of thing. So
so a 45 is like, I can cross over at 45 hertz, therefore my speakers are better than yours. Well, objectively, your speakers play lower than their speakers play lower than yours. That's objectively true. And if that is your subjective view of quality, then yes, quality wise, their speaker can play lower than yours, and that means that their speaker has greater extension, which means it is objectively a better speaker. But in an actual home theater setup, you don't want the bass playing from your main speakers. You don't want anything below 80 hertz playing at your main speakers because of how bass interacts with the room. That's why we take it and put it all into the subwoofer, because the subwoofer we can move to the place that's best for the bass. And your ear, I don't care how good their little speakers are or big speakers are or how good they think their ears are, they can't tell where that bass is coming from, regardless if it's in the main speaker or the subwoofer. They can't tell because it's omnidirectional and we cannot locate it. I literally just read an article like yesterday that was like, bass gets directional, below, or above like 120. I don't remember what they said, 40 hertz or something like that. I was like, shut up. No, it doesn't. It doesn't get directional about 40 hertz. You don't know what you're talking about. The people are like, oh, you want to get tower speakers for your home theater because you want that bass will get directional, and you need to have you don't want to be able to show where it's coming. It's coming from the subwoofer.
I mean, interestingly, within a room, since the room's transition frequency, the point at which the room starts to dictate more of the sound than just the direct sound coming from the speaker straight to your ear before it's had a chance to reflect off of any other surfaces. I mean, that's up at 250 hertz in most cases.
Right.
So ideally, if we could get away with setting the crossover that high without the sound becoming directional and being able to tell that it's coming from the subwoofer instead of your front speaker, I would be setting the crossover that high. But we can't get away with setting it that high without running into directionality problems. So we end up at 80 hertz because that's right around the point where we can't tell directionality anymore, and we're well down into the transition frequency of the room.
And honestly, you don't have to tell your friends to listen to us or listen to you. I mean, the research is there. The research is out there.
I mean, check out the Harman multiple subwoofer optimization white paper, because that clearly explains the how and the why of using multiple subwoofers in anything that we would consider a normal room in a house. Even if it's an open great room, it's still acoustically a small space, because some of those deep bass sounds will have to have reflected off of something before they ever reach your ear in one full cycle of the sound. So, I mean, this is coming from the intuition that the ideal would be, since each speaker channel in a recording can be full range, that the intuitive ideal would be that each speaker plays full range. This is what the signal in this channel is, containing sounds potentially all the way down to 20 hertz or lower. So isn't the ideal that one speaker plays all of those sounds from that one location? I totally get the intuition, and that was taken as common knowledge of what the ideal would be. But we know better now, largely thanks to Harman's research, that we're not outdoors. We do have walls, and those walls are close enough that sounds in the bass have to have reflected off something before they ever reach our ear, and that changes the game. So, there you go.
Right. So he says when he looks at the lineups of most major speaker brands, often the very largest tower model uses the exact same tweeter and mid-range or mid-woofer as the bookshelf model. The only difference is the tower adds additional bass woofers and, of course, the larger cabinet. So is Josh correct to assume that the bookshelf model can actually play as loud in the mid-range and treble as the tower model? I would say this depends.
Yeah, it's not always the case. You can't just make that assumption and know for sure you're right.
Now, I have seen speakers that opened up. Like RBH does this on the regular, not always, but I've seen it done where literally if you just took their speaker and sliced off the side, the inside of the mid-range and tweeter, that area is all closed off together, has its own little port. It is exactly the same size and internal cabinet dimension as
the bookshelf.
And then the woofers, which are then tacked on, have their own cabinet, which is not necessarily all the way to the bottom of the speaker. It might be only a third of the way down, and then it's sealed off and it has its port. And then below that is empty space. There's just nothing in there whatsoever. And it's not a bad design. It is a good design. It is basically like
it's actually correct design.
You just don't hey, I've got all this extra space in here, I'm just going to leave it all open. That changes the tuning of everything. It makes a big difference. So in a case like that, it may be true that the tweeter and mid-range can handle as much power and play as loud as the bookshelf, but not necessarily. There's crossover considerations to consider and other design constraints. They may have changed in order to integrate those woofers into what would probably be a 2.5 or 3-way design at that point.
Yeah, what you'll usually find is they might use the exact same tweeter and the exact same mid-range or mid-woofer, between the two. But, in the case of the 2-way bookshelf speaker, that mid-woofer is playing down as low as it can, however, low they've designed it to play, which very often is going to be, 60, 70 hertz, something in that range, right?
Right.
Whereas in the tower design, they have, maybe one fairly large woofer or a couple of, 6.5-inch or 8-inch woofers or something like that. But those are crossed over at maybe 350, maybe sometimes even 500 hertz to that mid woofer. So that has changed the output spectrum of that speaker as a whole. And so, what I like to point to, like David Fabricant over at Ascend, he's talked about this a lot on Ascend Zone Forum, because people frequently ask for certain speaker designs using the same drivers that he's already using in some of existing designs, and he's gone into depth explaining why he isn't bringing out certain things. So I'll give the example, like in the SE series, he's got the sealed HTM200 SE, which is the exact same tweeter as what's in the larger CBM ported bookshelf speaker, but these have the exact same power handling. They have nearly the exact same output, but one of them, it's all about form factor, uses 2 4-inch woofers in a sealed cabinet versus one of them using a 6.5-inch woofer in a ported cabinet, but they end up with almost identical response. And he's like, this is an example of maximizing what this tweeter can do. And then in that same series, he's got the larger CMT 340 speaker, which uses the exact same woofer as what was in the CBM, the smaller bookshelf model, but uses 2 of them, and then has a slightly beefed up tweeter. So he's like, in order to make use of having this larger woofer area, not just to play a little bit lower, but to play louder, he also beefed up the tweeter a little bit. And then people are like, well, why don't you make a tower in that series? He's like, well, okay, I'll give you what is just a pedestal stand for the CMT to stand on. It makes it look like a tower, but it's literally the exact same speaker just attached to a pedestal stand. And then over in the Sierra RAL series, you've got this ribbon tweeter that's used in the smallest model, the Luna, and then the exact same ribbon tweeter used in the Sierra 2, but he's talked about how he actually had to tamp down the output capability of that exact same tweeter in the tiny little Luna, because it only has a single 4-inch driver in there that can't play as loud as the 5 3/4-inch driver that's in the Sierra 2. And then when he did make a larger model, well, he beefed up to the larger ribbon tweeter, added a mid-range driver and a couple of deep woofers. Now, the exact same driver complement is found in the tower and in the Horizon. And then some people have said, well, why don't you make a 3-way bookshelf that uses the larger tweeter and a mid-range driver and a single woofer? He's like, well, because then I'd have to tamp everything down. What's the point of that? Just turn the Horizon sideways and there's your bigger bookshelf speaker.
Right.
So it's those types of things where you might, in some cases, have to tamp down the capability of that identical tweeter in the bookshelf model if to make it work with the single woofer or whatever you're using. Otherwise you've got extra headroom that's built in there. Yeah.
And like you said, there might be like a tweeter mid-range and then 3 woofers, let's say.
Yeah, that's right.
But what's really maybe going on is the tweeter and the tweeter's playing what the tweeter was playing, probably doesn't change. The mid-range crosses over into the tweeter probably in the exact same spot.
Yeah.
But like you said, that woofer, that first woofer that's closest to that mid-range might actually be crossed over directly into that. It's playing by itself. And then that again crosses over into those last 2 woofers.
Right.
So suddenly your power handling absolutely, your amount of volume you can put out absolutely changes, because the defining factor was that mid-range driver is no longer going to start breaking up when it's trying to play 60 hertz at whatever frequency, because it doesn't have to go to 60 hertz anymore. It's going to 500 hertz, or it's going to 600 hertz or something like that, which means it can play a lot louder before it starts breaking up. So even though you're looking at the same drivers, things have changed. So not lastly, because he's got some more. Next, he asks, what would be the reason to ever choose a tower model over a bookshelf model plus subwoofers? Well, first of all, the plus subwoofers is with the tower too. I think we've made that clear.
Yes.
But like we just said, sometimes you're sitting so far away, you need things to be louder. Which means that tweeter and mid-range by itself may not be able to get loud enough from your distance. So you need the tower speaker to do that. Other reasons to do it: you like the way they look. You don't want to buy a stand. You know, I mean, someone gave them to you. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to do it, but sonically, the only real good reason to do it is so that you can hear full reference volume down to 80 hertz at your seated distance.
Yeah, and primarily where you're gonna notice the biggest difference, like if you were to measure it, is gonna be in the upper bass or the mid bass region,
right.
Because there is an instance where you could have a room large enough where some of that energy starts to get lost, just coming out of a small bookshelf speaker. Yeah, it's playing down to 60 or 70 hertz, maybe even, still it's minus 3 dB at 65 hertz or something like that. And you're saying, okay, this tower version that uses very similar drivers or the same drivers says, it's playing all the way down to minus 3 dB at 45 hertz or something. But, I'm crossing over at 80, so can't they both play similarly loud down to 65 hertz? As we explained, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes the maximum capability of that tweeter and mid-range driver had to be tamped down a bit, because in order to make the minus 3 decibel point at 65 hertz, let's say, you had to tamp down their absolute maximum output capability in that mid-range and treble a little bit. Whereas when you add in those extra woofers that the tower has, now that's crossing over at 350 or 500 or something, and you can max everything out, and that helps you fill in that mid-bass range that in a large room could start to get lost. So there can be absolute, true reasons why it would make sense in a setup to have it. But by and large, in your case where you're sitting 7 feet away, even for those mid-bass frequencies and that, it's like, no, you're so darn close to those speakers.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons to upgrade speakers. I mean,
yeah.
But to specifically and categorically say you need to have towers for home theater is just incorrect. It's just not true. There is no truth to that statement whatsoever. I mean, you don't have to have any speakers at all. You could have headphones, and they would work just fine for home theater. I just was listening to somebody the other day talk about it, like, oh, I don't have surround sound headphones. I'm like, what the hell's a surround sound headphone? I mean, they make some that have like multiple drivers in them. That's all gimmicks as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff that you want to do with surround sound and headphones can be done with 2 drivers.
It's all processing.
Yeah. It's all processing. So,
if you, Josh, were sitting considerably farther away from your speakers, we might have recommended to you upgrading to a tower model. Or
a very efficient bookshelf speaker.
That's right.
That can get real loud. So those would be the other option. Again, you don't always have to. So he asks, can a bookshelf setup actually be more efficient in the sense that it isn't necessary to purchase super powerful amplifiers to drive the bass woofers of tower speakers? Let me tell you the dirty little secret of home theater, sir. Almost nobody needs an amplifier. Almost
We're not saying that there's never a case, but yeah.
Almost nobody needs external amplification. We all want it. Sure. We all want it like we want a supercharger on our car. Good. We all want it like I want a calligraphy set, because those really fancy pens that you have to suck the ink in with the little lever thingy. I want that. I want it bad. I don't need it, and I don't need external amplification. I did need external amplification for the 2 speakers that my receiver would not power.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite literally one of the only valid reasons most people have to buy external amplification, is because they want to add speakers and they don't have amplifiers within their receiver to do it. But the dirty secret of home theater is everybody wants it because they are sexy and they are cool, and it makes you feel awesome to know that you've got 2 monoblocks that are putting out 200 watts, into one channel driven. And you're like, oh, yay. My speakers are using about 1.2 watts at peak.
Oh, no, you're probably getting up to 10 or 20 at peak.
Ooh, 10 to 20.
Where
could we ever find that many watts in an AV receiver? Oh, I remember.
40th of a second? For a 40th of a second, you're probably using 20 watts, Tom.
Yeah. So, yeah. This is also what your statement is, and I know I can see where this argument is coming in with you and your friends. You're saying, oh, you got to get these amplifiers for your towers. I don't have to get an amplifier for my bookshelf. That is true, but there are plenty of bookshelves out there that do require external amplification. they are normally super expensive because only people who have no design limitations would design a speaker like this, or somebody
with a low enough impedance and a difficult enough phase curve
load to drive,
that,
or using a technology like an electrostatic driver, which is inherently hard to drive, and then they sit 17 feet away from them.
There's that.
You're gonna need
again, distance is a huge part of this as well.
Are you gonna say anything on that?
No, that was it. Distance is a huge thing.
If you're going to have the same subwoofers regardless, would you be overpaying to get large full range tower speakers?
Depends on how far away you're sitting.
Yeah, again, it's a distance thing. It's not about over or underpaying.
But it is about it's about getting the right tool for your needs. Speakers are tools. That's what they are.
And honestly, if you overbuy by getting tower speakers, as long as they fit in your room and they fit the space, it's not like they're not playing the sound you want to hear.
It's not like you can't turn them down.
Right.
Whereas you could exceed the output capability of some small bookshelf speakers. If you're sitting far away in a large room and you're trying to crank that mid bass up, you could exceed their capability.
I mean, honestly, dude, you're overpaying for everything in here because you've got speakers when you could just be spend a couple $100 on 2 pairs of headphones and a splitter jack for your receiver, and hand one to your girlfriend, and hand one to yourself, and you never have to. You're done. But you decided that you wanted to have surround sound, and now you're. I mean, the overpaying is a subjective, very personal value judgment on what somebody has spent. What I'm willing to spend on a subwoofer or a receiver or a car or a projector or a surfboard doesn't necessarily line up with what you think is important. People go into bike shops and they walk out of there with $5,000 bicycles. And I'm like, dude, have you lost your mind? That thing doesn't even have wheels. It doesn't have wheels. Oh yeah, I've got the wheels at home. They're $2,000 a piece. I mean, what? So that's a value judgment. So I overpaying is very subjective, but you can get too much speaker for your space, and that can be a bookshelf speaker. It doesn't have to be a tower speaker. You can get, and we've had this happen on this podcast. Someone's like, I want to get these JTR or JRT or whatever they were called with a compression tweeter and stuff, and I'm sitting 6 feet away.
Yeah.
Dude, have you lost your mind? Those things. I mean,
they'll always say they want the dynamics.
You're going to be able to hear the electrons as they're lining up, waiting to get in there. They're going to be like, you'll hear them talking to each other. Are we going to play today? I don't know. We're going to play today? I don't know. I mean, that's how efficient that speaker is. So yeah, overpaying is very subjective. Nick in the UK. Back in January, Nick asked whether he should upgrade his TV, his AV receiver, or his Blu-ray player first. So naturally, we said we should upgrade his subwoofer, which sounds exactly like us. As fate would have it, that might turn out to be the case. His BK Electronic XXLS 400 subwoofer, which is 9 years old. Boy, that just sounds like a XL. I mean, what's a T-shirt? Is it a T-shirt?
Yeah, extra long stroke. It's going to the Pureless driver that's in there. That's what they call it.
Oh, is that what it is? That's okay.
Yep.
It started producing a constant crackle and other noises whenever it's powered on, even when nothing is but the power cable is plugged in. He said a short YouTube video demonstrating the odd sound. Do we have any idea what would be wrong with it, and whether it would be an easy inexpensive repair? All right, so I listened to this before the podcast. It's a very strange thing.
That is not super familiar to me. That precise sound that he sent in.
It's very regular. It sounds like a clock. It's like
cyclical. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and
what
I think
like
a heartbeat. It's almost like a fast heartbeat.
Yeah,
but it's
what
crackly.
I think. Well, I mean, so he's in the UK, so we're used to 60 hertz, but they have 50 hertz there.
Yeah.
So
faster than 50 hertz.
It might be faster than 50 hertz, but it sounds to me like the pole piece or something in there. It like the electrical field is unstable, and it's like crackling back and forth.
To me, it sounded like a relay trying to click over, and
you know what it sounds like to me? A new subwoofer, because that thing sounds busted, boss. I mean, that sounds like it could be anywhere.
I think it's in the. I think it's. If I had to guess at anything, I would guess that it's a relay in the power supply of that subwoofer because it sounds like something is trying to click over and can't, and it's just trying to do it over and over and over again. So
if you were saying to yourself, I wonder how much is this going to cost to fix, I would Google like your subwoofer and replacement amp and see what you found out, because
they probably won't even repair it. They'll just swap the amp out.
Yeah, and depending on and I know this sounds very intimidating, but or maybe it doesn't to you. It does to me. Swapping out the amp sounds like something that I don't want to get in there, but usually it is literally like the same speaker wires that you normally hook up to a speaker. That's what's in there connected to the driver, and then the amp is all by itself, kind of self-contained.
Yeah.
So if you could just get a replacement amp, you might be able to replace that would be the potential fix. But if it's the driver, then
I don't think it's the driver.
I
really think it's something in the power supply or the amplifier itself.
Yeah, it's much more likely. There's much more that can go wrong there than the other way.
It sounds like electrical noise to me.
So he's open to suggestions for replacement. His living room is roughly 23 by 14.5 feet. Standard ceiling height. So I guess 8 foot.
About 8 foot.
And first and foremost, it's really a living room, so huge subwoofers out of the question. Is BK electronic sub, which is basically a 15-inch cube, which is not small, but it's not huge. Was already pushing it, so no bigger than that. His max budget is £1,000, or those liras. That's pounds, right?
Pounds.
Yeah. So what do we suggest? So 14 by what?
14.5 by 23 by 8. That is under 3,000 cubic feet.
So you could go with, it's like a medium-sized room.
It is. It is squarely in the medium-sized room category.
So, I mean, a lot of times you can go to almost, like, especially Audioholics, but, that should give you an indication. But there's most of the medium-sized rooms are about the same size. So if a sub is rated for a medium-sized room, that would tell you that it'd be okay. Of course, here in the United States, I would say SVS, probably the 2000 series.
Yeah, an SB 2000 would be very happy in this room size, and it's actually physically a little bit smaller. It's closer to being a 14 to 14.5 inch cube.
So
it's quite similar in size, but actually a little bit smaller than the one you already had, but a more powerful amplifier in there, a longer stroke woofer in there with a considerably better driver material.
How many pounds is that?
The SVS. It's 800 at least at Amazon UK. 800 pounds for the price. So it's within what he was looking at.
So over there, REL is also pretty big too, though, right?
It is, and actually, BK Electronic is their OEM.
Oh, well, there you go.
You're not going to get much difference if you go to REL.
Okay. So there you go.
Yeah. I guess we're saying the SB2000 because it checks all the boxes. It's the right size you want. It's got the correct output for your room size, and it fits within the budget you were talking about. So we can heartily recommend that.
There you go. Nathan's going to go RVing this summer. There's a cute little 24-inch TV in his RV, but that won't do. This is okay. Nathan is used to his 8-foot screen with the JVC projector in his blacked out room at home. He isn't expecting to replicate those sorts of black levels or performance, but he'll be able to sit about 6 feet from a pull down screen in his RV. The boy don't play. And excuse me, my cough is much better, but every once in a while it sneaks up on me. Hey, last time I was sucking down cough drops in between your questions. He just wants the sheer size. A 75-inch flat panel would be great, but there's no wall space to accommodate that. So a pull-down projection screen makes much more sense. And he's willing to sacrifice 4K and HDR in the setup. So he's looking for a projector that is relatively small, color accurate, has a pretty short throw. Again, he's thinking about 75 inches from no more than 6 feet and under $1,000. You didn't say not loud, so that's good because it's probably going to be loud.
Well, there's going to be some fan noise for sure.
Yeah, you're going to be sitting awfully close to that thing. Bonus points if it uses an external power brick so that the actual power input plug on the projector itself is a DC input. So do we recommend?
Can't help you with that last part for what I'm going to recommend, I'm afraid.
No, I don't know any projectors that have external
well,
that
there's
aren't
some
like business
of those
class
little
ones.
Yeah, those little Pico projectors sometimes they do have that.
Yeah, I've got a Pico projector, and I mean, honestly, those would be great. If they've got LED backlights or lights, so they last like a bajillion hours.
But he wanted really accurate color, so
you're not going to get accurate color. You're not. 75 inches would be fine.
Oh yes,
that would be fine for a Pico projector. So I mean, if you're really willing to compromise, I mean, those price points would be well under $1,000.
Oh, very, guys. Very far.
So, and they're quite, when they say Pico, I mean like it's like two of your wallets.
Yeah,
depending on the size of your wallet.
But he stressed in his email how much he wants truly accurate color that he can calibrate, and it does not.
You're not going to get that. You're not going to check that box there. So every other full size projector is going to have the power supply inside the case.
So I'm going to recommend to you BenQ's HT2150 ST, the ST standing for short throw. Now, I don't know, it might be too short a throw, because if you're making a 75-inch image with the 2150 short throw, the lens of that projector needs to be anywhere between 3 feet 9 inches from the 75-inch screen to
really close.
4 feet 6 inches maximum. So you're going to be sitting behind this projector, which maybe that's fine. Maybe you can literally put this projector in front of you.
Yeah.
And just there it is. I mean, that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's an RV. So to me, I'm like, I don't understand how there's not going to be crap in the way.
Yeah.
But obviously he's got the sightlines worked out, but I don't see how there's not stuff in the way. But if he's got that worked out, then I mean, a little shelf or a little, mount on the ceiling or something like that, or putting it on the ground or whatever.
Or your outstretched legs in front of you
on your ottoman,
that's going to be real stable. But the thing is, the not short throw version, the HT2050A, the closest its lens could be to the screen in order to create a 75-inch image would be 6 feet 3 inches. And I'm like, it sounds like you got about 6 feet to work with, so that is just too far. I mean, it has to be that close or farther. It can be a maximum of 8 feet 2 inches to create a 75-inch image with the HT2050A. So I think the 2150 short throw is the right choice here. It has very accurate Rec 709 color. It's got the RGB 6-segment color wheel. You can absolutely calibrate it to very accurate 709. It's already very accurate out of the box to Rec 709. So it's definitely under $1,000. So other than not having DC input and using a regular 120-volt plug, it checks all the other boxes.
Yeah, I mean, it can be 6 feet 3 inches. I mean, he's sitting.
But that's the lens. You also
I understand
account
that.
for the body of the projector.
I would guess the way this is going to work is when you first walk into the RV, it's usually right behind the driver's seats, and the screen's going to come down right there,
maybe
by the driver's seats, which means there's going to be more room behind him.
Maybe
that would be my guess, because I can't really see how else.
Yeah, it's not going to be 6 feet wide, is it? The RV inside.
No, I don't think he's going to be sitting on the back wall of this thing at 6 feet. So that's probably, what's the price on these things?
Let's see. So the 2050A, you're looking at about $700, and then you're looking at about $850, I think, on the 2150 short throw.
So one of those will work for you. Figure out which one works.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the accurate color and you want the small size and you want something that can do this, that's the choice. One of those BenQs.
Enjoy that fan noise, dude. Johnny is using an Epson 5040 UV projector. He's tried the various picture presets in his dedicated fully light controlled theater. Are there any settings we would typically recommend that he change? I mean, there's cinema mode, right? I mean, you've done all that.
Yeah, I mean, on the 5040 UB, it can be a little bit more involved, and instead of literally going through all the settings, because there's multiple picture modes, because it does HDR as well, I am simply going to reference you to projectorreviews.com. Where it's their review of the 6040 UB, which is the pro cinema alternative, but they are exactly the same inside, the 6040 and the 5040. And they have a calibration section in there where you actually want to be down at the bottom of the page, because they updated that review when they redid the calibration after a firmware update that changed some things. So get the most recent calibration settings that they have. They've done it for an ISF day mode, an ISF night mode, and an HDR mode. So it's got all the settings you need, and there's lots of them to go through. So just follow along with their images. It'll literally walk you through what you need to program.
So he's got a couple of friends who also own projectors. They've been discussing the idea of all chipping in to buy a color meter to share and help them calibrate their setups. They've been buying the Datacolor Spider 5 Elite. Is this a good idea? Is there a different meter they should get instead, or should they just forget it entirely and not mess around with color calibration at all? So color calibrate, professional calibrators, their meters they start at like 10 grand.
Oh, if you're going that high, yep,
yeah.
Sure.
The truly accurate ones, the ones that are the professionals use, 10, 20, $25,000 for one of those color meters. I mean, they're very, very, very accurate.
Definitely not necessary to go to that level, though.
No. Okay, so the software that I think even most of them at this point use, unless they're like old school and they don't want to change, is Calman, the Calman software, which you can get for, I guess there was
several $100s. Yeah, I mean, they did talk about bringing out the new Calman home version, but that
was only going to work with that one TV, right?
Yeah, you have to get it specifically for a TV, and they don't have any that are meant for projectors. So you'd be looking at the home enthusiast version,
right?
Which I think is about $400 or $500, somewhere in that range.
So that's just the software, and the software itself is frankly pretty easy to use, but it's not like a plug and play thing. It's easy to use from a professional calibrator standpoint compared to some of the other stuff, but it's you still have to have something that generates your
test patterns,
your test patterns and your gray screens and stuff like that.
There are alternatives for all this, though, that I will mention.
So you guys are more than welcome. This is my take on it, and Rob will give you, like, you guys want to go down the rabbit hole. Rob will take you by the hand and lead you straight there.
I won't go quite that far, but I'll point you the way. Someone else can take your hand.
This is something that we talked about a lot in this podcast about 10 years ago, and it was much more necessary then than it is now. They have gotten so much better at putting out screens that are more uniform.
Yeah, very color neutral. Yep.
And when I say uniform, I don't mean like uniform across the panel, but I mean like when it comes out and you put it into a mode that it looks the same throughout multiple sets of TVs. You kind of know what you're getting. It's a lot easier. It used to be people would share their settings, and I'd be like, "Don't listen to any of that."
Right.
The settings,
because the unit variation was so much.
But now that's not quite the case as much. So I'm much more comfortable saying save your money and spend it on subwoofers than I am going out and spending it on all this stuff that Rob's going to tell you what to spend it on. And I think most calibrators, most people these days will tell you, and this comes straight from Clint, who has reviewed thousands of sets. He has stopped checking the calibration on projectors and TV sets when they come in. He's like, it's pointless. He goes, they're like 85 to 90% of the way there just by going to, and this is across TVs, of moderate quality. You don't have to go, top of the line. He's talking about projectors that are, mid-level projectors, that sort of stuff. It's just, they're almost there. And he's like, who cares? I don't care, and I'm the video calibration guy, and I don't care.
Yeah, they'll always talk about the delta E or the amount of error, and we're finding these days that as long as you put it in like the cinema mode, that your range of error is like 3 or 4, and the human perceptible level in these calibration things, the way they're set up, is that the delta error of 3 or lower is imperceptible to the human eye, and tons of these now, as soon as you put it in the cinema mode, the color errors are like 3 or lower. Which means perceptibly they're essentially perfect. I mean, of course, a professional calibrator in a grading suite or something will want it even better than that. But for a consumer, there's not a whole lot of need. So all of that said, just to answer the questions directly, I wouldn't really highly recommend going with one of the Spider ones. They're okay if you're going to do this once or twice and you want to use the software that they come with because it's a little bit easier to use or all that. I'm not going to say it's a horrible decision, but I would point you to X-Rite's i1 Display Pro. You can get them for just a little over $200 on Amazon, so it is maybe $50 or $60 more than the Spider 5 that you were looking at. You're talking about splitting this amongst 3 or 4 people or something like that, so it's not drastically more expensive. And that X-Rite i1 Display Pro Again, it's the unit-to-unit variation by all accounts, much less the just build quality and how long it lasts and how long it remains accurate. There's been independent testing to show that it's leagues ahead of the Spider devices. So seems to be well worth the money. Plus, there isn't a single piece of calibration software out there that is not able to use the i1 Display Pro. They all work with it.
I actually think that's what I have.
It very well might be.
I'm looking over my shoulder at it, and I can't.
And Calman's own C6 is based on the i1 Display Pro. They did their own tweaks to it and sell it under their own name, but that's what it's based on. So I've got to point you there. And then if you don't want to pay for Calman, because it is several $100s to get the home enthusiast, there is a free software. There's a whole tutorial that I'll link to that's over on AVS Forum, and it's really good. This isn't one of these things that's, somebody just put something up and didn't get it vetted or anything like that. No, these are professionals who put this together, and it's a great free tutorial. It's called HCFR. That's the name of the software, the HCFR calibration software. And it's meant to work as far as what your sources are going to be with AVS's own AVS 709 test disc that has all the test patterns on a disc that you can play in any Blu-ray player. So it's all free. It's a pretty darn amazing resource. It's not necessarily going to act like a wizard to walk you through it step by step. So you're gonna want to follow the tutorial, but it's all there available for free, and it works with X-Rite's i1 Display Pro. So
I would much sooner buy a microphone from her.
A measurement microphone? Do the audio side? Yep.
Do the audio side. I feel that there's a lot more benefit that can be had in that than there can be had in this.
But if it's just as a hobby and to get into the tweaking of it, those are great tools to have. And I don't think it's breaking the bank, So.
All right, Shane. Shane has been using his partially finished basement as his gaming and theater room for several years. He's finally finished the room fully, so he's got insulation in the walls, drywall all around, a fully padded carpet, and proper lighting. He won a contest with a $1,500 prize, so he's got about $800 to put towards a subwoofer upgrade. Sounds like you have $750, and your wife has the other $750. Is what it sounds like to me. That's what about $800 sounds like. The finished room is 24 by 12.5 by 9.5, which is medium size. Nice. Which works out to be about 2050 cubic feet. His existing equipment consists of a Marantz SR5005 receiver, Andrew Jones Pioneer front tower speakers and bookshelf surrounds, a Polk CS1 center, and an ancient subwoofer that came from an Optimus brand home theater in a box.
Wasn't Optimus like the house brand of Radio Shack?
I believe so.
I
might
think
be wrong.
What that was.
Yeah. So you have a base module that is farting around in that room, almost literally. He's leaning towards SVS. I wonder why. But he tried using their subwoofer matching tool, and now he isn't sure which model he should get. 2000. It's something that ends in 2000, and you'll be fine. When he said he had yes, okay. So that wizard is I hate that thing.
It's one of the banes of our existence. Yes.
I hate
as much
that
as we
thing.
Praise many SVS things, we do not like the subwoofer matching tool.
The subwoofer matching tool takes how much they think your speakers make or cost, and they match it with a comparatively priced subwoofer. That's not how you do it. All right.
Yep.
So he says when he said they had Pioneer Andrew Jones towers, it said he should get a PB2000. But when he said he had Pioneer Andrew Jones bookshelf speakers, it said he should get an SB1000.
That's a very different, and why can't they just set the thing? We asked Gary Yakubian directly, like just set it to ask what your room size is.
I know, it's quite literally the only thing you have to do. I don't understand who came up with this thing. Like some marketing genius is like, no, but if they have like B&W speakers, we should sell them an SB4000.
Please enter the dimensions of your room. Here's the subwoofer model you should get. It's that.
Well, the problem is that too many people have great rooms, and they're going to put these huge dimensions, and they're going to come up with
only going to put the
subwoofer.
dimensions of the theater area that they're thinking about. Yes.
Well, either way, yes, you're right. But I mean, if they put in dimensions of their speakers, it gives you an idea of how much they're willing to spend on stuff, and and maybe how close they're sitting and that sort of thing. So what you don't want to do is have them have itty bitty tiny cube speakers in a corner of their great room, and then they put in the whole dimensions of the great room. You're like, you need a subwoofer the size of your couch.
You need 4 PB16 Ultras. Yes.
So if he gets a PB2000, that will eat up his entire budget, and he would not consider adding a second subwoofer after that. Not consider it. Yes, you will.
That's what he said.
You will consider it. You just won't do it for a while. With the total cost of 2 subwoofers were around $1,000, he could definitely consider upping his budget by that amount. If he were to spend $600 or $700 on the single sub right now, he'd consider getting a second sub at some point in the future, but not right away. So given his room size, budget, and confusion because of what SVS's subwoofer matching tools told him, what do we recommend? I recommend you get a PC 2000 if you can, but if you can't, then the SB 2000 is fine.
What? Yeah, SB 2000 in this. And well, I mean, what about a pair of PB 1000s for $950?
As long as the footprint works.
Right?
You have a big enough room that it shouldn't be too much. But the difference between an SB 2000 and a PB 1000 is significant size wise.
I mean, I would not go SB 1000 in here. No. That's too small.
No, it's too small.
PB 2000 is not necessary in this room size or physical size or cost wise. So we're going, okay, there are two models in between the SB 1000 and the PB 2000. Those would be the PB 1000 or the SB 2000. So flip the numbers on the things that SVS's tool recommended to you. Flip the numbers to the PB and the SB and get one of those. Now, either of those choices fits within the category that would allow him to get to either right away or soon. At some point in the future, because the SB 2000 is what? It's $700, right? The SB 2000 is $700, so it's close.
I think so.
But he said he'd still possibly consider it if it's $700, although not right away. I'm leaning. You just grab dual PB 1000s right now and you're done. I mean, it's $950, $150 more than the budget you got to spend, and you've already got duals. I mean, as long as they'll physically fit, like Tom said.
Yeah,
I'm leaning that way.
That's fine. Basically, there's a subwoofer in there for everybody, and I feel the need to say this every once in a while. I'm going to say it again right now. I do wish we had a either get the SVS in this size or this one and this other company. And get them, because they have this, similar output, similar prices, and there's just nobody. There's
not at exactly $500 like that PB 1000 comes in, because everybody else either has a little bit of shipping or they're a little bit more expensive. Right. I mean, when you get to the really high output stuff, we absolutely start going to other companies, because there are other companies delivering the same or more raw output at a lower price than SVS is. But in the lower being $500-ish price range, no, that's it. Get a couple PP 1000s.
Rob on Facebook. Rob would like us to ask us some basic questions. I almost started answering these questions on Facebook because I got it at just the right time, and then I didn't. He started us talking about the importance of having matching speakers across the front three, but he's seen a lot of setups that are pre-bundled speaker packages where the center definitely has a different complement of drivers versus the front bookshelf or tower left and right speakers. So how important is for all three speakers to be literally identical? Well, okay. It really, I mean, this is one of the things that Rob is much more on the bandwagon of let's get all three up front matching 100%. The reality of the situation is if you have three identical speakers up front, and depending on your room and how they're placed and stuff like that, they still might not sound identical.
They still might not, just because of room placement.
So to me, the thing about the center channel, the whole reason why you have all these different complements of drivers and everything else, we've been talking about complements of drivers and how different drivers in the box and the shape and all that stuff will change how you voice everything and you maybe tamp down the tweeter, as Rob was talking about earlier. The whole thing with center channels is we had to try to get them underneath a TV.
Yep.
And you just can't.
It was originally always envisioned as just being three identical speakers all at the same height across the front. That was how it was originally envisioned, but then they're like, whoops, that puts the center right where the television needs to be.
Right.
So something's got to give.
Yeah. So what gave was the shape of the center channel. And honestly, I mean, to my ear, most of the time, having a well-made center channel matches just fine with speakers on either side of it. I just, as long as it's well made and well placed, I don't find that there's very many issues.
No, what's important is that if a sound is panning across the front, going from the left speaker into the center, into the right, or vice versa, we don't want it to sound like, it's a Honda and then a Ferrari and then a Honda again. Right? We want it to be Ferrari, 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 or Honda, 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 all the way across 3 as that sound pans. That's what's important. And sometimes you can achieve that even with completely different brands. You might have different brand of center speaker compared to your front, left, right.
I've done that.
It's still possible for that to be achieved. Not guaranteed. It's not necessarily easy. And since we're trying to give general advice, it's usually easier to stick with whatever the matching center speaker is, or using 3 identical speakers, because at least then we know we're starting from a place where, well, at least these drivers are all the same, or they should all be voiced similarly. But again, just because of room placement, it still might not perfectly match, or you might need some equalization to get it there. So the end goal is what we're after, which is that matching timbre, that pan can be seamless going across those 3 speakers. But do they have to be 3 literally identical speakers to get that? No, they don't.
This is another one of those things that we were talking about earlier about this sort of, folk wisdom of home theater that, it's a truism that it's best to have the front 3 speakers be all identical.
Right.
I just don't think that's the case. I don't think it's always best to have the front 3 speakers all identical, because then you end up with people who are taking that center speaker, which is another tower speaker because they have towers on the side, and trying to hang it from the ceiling, or put it on its side at an angle and a weird thing. You know what I mean? We've seen some weird stuff, man. We have seen speakers that have been hung from ceilings in this
absolutely
in this
chains
podcast before. From chains. That was crazy, man. It's like, but the tweeters are at ear height. I'm like, dude, that is awesome. I would never have done that. But so it's true in that you're coming from a place where all the drivers are the same, all the speakers are the same, all that stuff. But it's not.
This is literally the same speaker, and therefore, if there is a timbre difference, we know it's because of the room, not because of the speaker, right? So it helps to eliminate a variable for sure.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I like RBH so much is I've owned another of their speakers, and one of the speakers I owned was a budget center channel, which absolutely played beautifully with any speaker that was well made. And if I put it to, and if the timbre match changed, like when I added a different speaker to my system, I knew it was that speaker that was the problem, because the RBH wasn't the problem, because that speaker was absolutely
just plain neutral.
Yeah. So he says RSL is having a clear out. Who are we talking to again? I forgot. Rob. Oh, how did I forget that? Rob W or S or something. A W. All right, Rob W. Rob is having a clear out. RSL is having a clear out sale on their CG23 speakers as they prepare for a new version. So they're selling their 5.1 package that includes 5 identical CG23 speakers and their Subwoofer 10S sub for $1,200 at the moment. He'd be upgrading from a Cambridge satellite speaker package with a smaller 8-inch sub, but go on. For the price, is there any better 5.1 speaker package that we would recommend to him instead? $1,200 is kind of hard to beat, to be honest with you. I looked at we're going to go back to having identical speakers up front. The RBH Impression series, I think they're like $150 a piece. Is that right? $160 a piece.
Yeah, the regular Impression series, sure.
Yeah. So the bookshelves. So that would be 3. So if you bought 5 of them, right? So that'd be $750. And then if you bought a $500 sub
PB1000,
you're right there at $1,200. So
you're at $1,250.
So whatever, it's $1,250.
Yes. Very close.
Yeah. So to me, that beats this.
Okay.
But I've never heard these speakers. So they look okay, just looks wise.
Audioholics reviewed them very favorably.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's if you went with these, I don't think you're getting a raw deal or anything like that. We do like that Subwoofer 10S as a $400 subwoofer choice, because even though for $500 we like the PB1000 a little bit better, if you got to save that $100, we like that Subwoofer 10S. We think it's probably about the best option out there for $400 right now, and plays very nicely down to 25 hertz, not to 20 hertz. but which is actually a question coming up, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, very similarly, I can give you an alternative that's right in that same ballpark price. I'm going to be pointing you to getting SVS's PB1000 as that $500 sub that I really like, and then getting 5 of Ascend Acoustics HTM 200 speakers, which altogether, including the shipping, is right around $700. So you put it all together and you're right at that $1,200 price point again. So Ascend, RBH, these RSL, we'd be very happy with any of those choices.
Yeah. This is not you have not found a bad deal. I'll put it to you that
Correct.
way. I mean, if you bought these, I would not say, really? Should talk to us first. No, this is good. And
but if you go with the RBH or the Ascend, you can get an upgraded sub. So that's
true, which we're going to talk about right now. He says, we seem to talk about the 20 hertz like it's some sort of magical number. If you look up the specs of most subs you can buy at retail stores, even the $800 to $1,000 ones don't appear to actually play that low. So how important is 20 hertz really? And how close or how far is the experience of a typical $500 sub compared to a sub that truly reaches to 20 hertz? Well, if you buy SVS, your $500 sub.
That's why we like that $500 sub so darn much. That PB1000 reaching truly down to 20 hertz for $500.
Subwoofer. The name of it is a subwoofer, which means it should be playing sounds that are subsonic, that are below what you can hear.
Well, technically just below what the woofer in your speaker is playing. That's why it's below subwoofer, but
whatever. That's not how I define it.
That's not our definition.
That's not our definition. It should be. And there's not a brick wall filter on that PB1000. It will play down into 19, 18, 17 hertz, which is subsonic.
Yeah.
So
the reason the 20 hertz comes up is because that's the threshold of human hearing.
That's right.
We can't hear anything lower than 20 hertz, but we can hear 20 hertz, most of us anyway. And therefore, if you want to hear everything you possibly can hear, you need a subwoofer that can actually play down to 20 hertz.
And if you want to feel anything that comes lower than that, you have to have a subwoofer that can.
Or just feel, because I mean, a good portion of what 20 hertz is physical tactile feeling as well. And it's not the kick you in the chest. That's higher. Right. That's like 50 hertz. It's the blur your vision, your teeth start like feeling like they're vibrating.
You can feel it in your stomach. You know what I mean?
Kind of tactile.
Rumble,
and you can't get it if you can't play down to 20 hertz. And it's fun when it's there.
So you ask us, we talk like 20 hertz is like some sort of magical number. Well, I mean, the people who are going to talk about other subwoofers is like, well, there's very low content below 30 or 35 hertz. You're like, yes, you're correct.
That's certainly true. I mean, music, basically, there's exceedingly few instruments that play any lower than 32 hertz. That's kind of the threshold for most musical instruments.
So, I mean, you're right. There is very little content, but there's not none. And then I want to exactly. I mean, it's kind of like saying, oh, your tweeters roll off at 10 hertz. Most people can't hear that far above 10 hertz anyway. 10 kilohertz. I'm sorry, 10 kilohertz. Most people can't hear that far above 10 kilohertz. Anyways, you won't be missing much. I mean, you might say, oh, that sounds fine, or you might say, wait a second, what do you mean?
There's a whole octave that I can hear as a human.
Yeah, there's stuff up there though, right? There's like cymbals and bird chirps and other noises that are up there. You're like, yep, yeah, they're up there, but you won't miss them. Well, I feel like I would miss them. I mean, I feel like I might miss that. might like to have a speaker that can actually play the entire range of human hearing. So while 20 hertz isn't a magical number, it is magical in that it delineates the end of the human hearing range.
It's a
on the low end.
threshold number, yeah. And both Tom and I have definitely had systems with subwoofers that could not play down to 20 hertz.
Yeah.
And then we got subwoofers that could play down to 20 hertz, and we didn't want to go back.
That's right.
So that's basically, what's the difference of the experience? Once you've had it, you don't want to go back.
And if we've had people on this podcast, especially back when HSU was making their STF, whatever it was.
Yeah, STF 2.
Missed
that
it was.
thing. Missed that.
Yeah, $350 sub that played down to like
25 hertz.
25 hertz, and we're like close enough. You can save money
for that price.
Money. Yeah, close enough. But if we would always say, if you got 150 extra bucks to spend,
once you get that jelly in your eyes wiggling, you're like, oh, that was kind of fun.
Yeah. So I mean, it is a magical number. It is magical in that what it delineates. But
and there's plenty of people who write into this podcast who say we don't go far enough because they want that 10 hertz. That's what they want.
Yeah, well, if you think there's nothing below, down between 32 and 20, there's really nothing below around 10 hertz, man.
You cannot hear it. That is just a fact. You cannot hear it.
So projector versus flat panel. He says he's got a 75-inch Samsung Q6FN. He likes it just fine. He could never go smaller, and he'd like an even larger image. A 77-inch OLED is totally out of the question just based on the price. His room is almost entirely light-controlled, and he usually watches movies at night anyway. But he'd like to keep the cost of a projector purchase to about $1,500. So what are the pros and cons here? His existing 75-inch Q6 versus a $1,500 projector with a 100-inch screen. 100+ inch screen. I have a hard time with this one, to be honest with you. Because for your money, what you can get when you are looking at a smaller screen, like a direct view screen, like a direct view versus a projector is a completely different experience.
It is a different experience for sure.
So when I go to my parents, I'm watching their plasma. I'm like, wow, this has a different sort of sharpness to it that maybe I don't really experience in mine. It's not really sharpness. It's I don't know. It's like
contrast.
It's
what it is. It's what your eye's picking up.
Yeah,
it's that contrast difference.
So, what you get with a projector is you get a much lower price per diagonal inch. Essentially,
definitely. Yes.
That's why the projector is king of the home
that
theater.
sheer size that just the flat panel cannot match it. Well, it's certainly not for the price.
But getting the once you have a flat panel and you're really married to that high contrast and HDR and Dolby Vision and 4K and stuff, you start looking at all those different features, and to get all of that and that high contrast as well in a projector, it starts getting real pricey. And $1,500,
$4,000 for the JVC.
Yeah, and $1,500 doesn't touch it.
That kind of black level and contrast. That said, he's coming from a Q6, which really good QLED as far as the native contrast of the LCD panel itself. It's up over 6,000 to 1, which is about as good as any LCD panels out there get. But it is edge lit, so it really doesn't have any effective local dimming in there. So you're relying on the native contrast of the LCD panel itself, which means the difference in just sheer panel contrast between his existing flat panel and what a really good projector could do is not enormous. But in terms of sheer peak brightness, it absolutely, of course, it's well over 1,000 nits that the Q6FN can do, which of course a projector is going to be nowhere near. So you're trading off sheer peak brightness and some contrast and even a little bit of black level performance when you're talking about a $1,500 projector for sheer size. That's the trade-off. That's the pro and con. Now, the thing is, we have this lovely new BenQ HT3550 model that sells for $1,500 that is remarkably good. It's got a dynamic iris on it now, so it doesn't have the really gray-looking black levels that the previous $1,500 DLP projectors had. Until you step up to the $3,000 Epson 5050 UB, there's about nothing better in terms of black levels, so that's remarkable. Pin sharp, being a single chip DLP, and it can now do very close to the full P3 color gamut. So you're getting the wide color too. Compatible with HDR, plenty of brightness for a 100-inch screen, but of course nothing close to 1,000 nits. So I don't think the compromise, if you want the size, obviously you're not getting a 100-inch flat panel for $1,500.
No.
So if you want the sheer size, the compromise that you're making for a $1,500 projector these days, now that the HT3550 exists, is kind of remarkably small. So if the thing you care about most is super bright little highlights in HDR, well, projector can't get you that. But the flat panel can't get you the sheer size. So that's about it. You decide which matters more to you.
Right. Infinite Gary. Samsung showed an Ultra HD resolution 75-inch micro LED display prototype at CES. So far, that seems to be the smallest screen size they've been able to manufacture while retaining full Ultra HD resolution. But as we've been saying on the podcast, we don't necessarily care about the exact pixel count so much. We'd be willing to have micro LED modules with whatever resolution each modules happen to have, and then stitch those modules together to make whatever screen size we want, right? Yes.
Yeah, I'm down with that. As long as the pixel pitch is small enough that I'm not seeing pixels from my viewing distance, good enough.
So what if there were micro LED modules with the pixels close enough together that they create Ultra HD resolution at the 75-inch screen size, but then you use fewer of these modules to make a 55-inch display instead? You'd have higher than full HD resolution, but not 4K, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there would be any benefit to doing that versus getting a 4K resolution 55-inch OLED? Yeah, well, the benefit would be that you are now. I mean, these things you like wallpaper. You know what I
You
mean?
could expand the size in the
Yeah,
future potentially if that's
yeah.
how they work.
If that's how they work, yeah.
Can't do that with a 55-inch OLED. It's stuck being 55 inches.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what that's what we're kind of talking about here. Like I feel like that's where we're going. We're going with
Mm.
like these almost I picture them like when you play with Legos, they had the Lego like grass.
Yep.
Those little
Yep.
big square
Yeah,
panels
yeah,
that
yeah.
you would snap together.
That everything else would go on.
That
Yep.
I feel like that's what this is gonna be. They're gonna
Leading to that.
sell these things in, like, 12-inch squares, or, maybe they'll be, like, 16 by 9 rectangles, and you'll just buy the right number of them, and then you'll have whatever your resolution is, and if you choose to make one that's 55-inch diagonal, and you get the cheaper ones, then you're gonna have closer to 1080p resolution.
Sure.
But if you buy the more expensive ones, then you're gonna have closer to 4K resolution. But, you'll still have HDR, you'll still have, the whatever other color in contrast specs they have.
Yeah.
Uh, and I feel like that's kind of the direction that might be going.
Yeah, I mean, the
But
advantages that micro LEDs are supposed to offer over current OLEDs is they should be able to get even brighter. So the well over 1,000 nit thing that OLEDs can't quite do yet, that should be possible with these. They should be able to have even wider color.
yeah,
And they should not have any risk of burn-in. I mean, that's the big one that everyone's really going. But of course, at the beginning, they're going to be considerably more expensive. OLED's only getting less expensive, and when these
right.
micro LEDs come out, they're going to be well more expensive. So, would there be any benefit? Well, I guess the idea is that it could be a bit brighter, no burn-in, maybe even wider color, and the ability to potentially increase your screen size by adding more modules. Those would be the advantages.
I mean, that would be, if you think about it, that's just, I mean, that'd be fantastic if that was the case. Now, I'm sure they'll find some way to screw it up and make it so that you have to buy it in its case or whatever, or it'll be somehow limited so you can't expand it later, or you have to buy a new module, controller module, or scaler, or whatever it is. But hopefully not. We'll see. So it's been mentioned that micro LED displays can offer even wider colors than OLEDs, almost the entire Rec 2020 gamut. So if you were to take a real life object, a Coke can, or your favorite team's jersey, and hold it next to a micro LED display, would the colors on the screen perfectly match the real life objects now? They can right now. I mean, why can't they right now?
Well, there are still some colors outside of even the P3 color gamut. But more than that, it would entirely depend on what lighting was used to make the recording of that object.
I mean,
because the lighting of the room you're in right now has to be the same as the lighting that was used during the recording in order for those colors to look the same.
So, provided you have a good enough camera,
Yes.
and your TV is properly calibrated,
and
then
the
you
lighting
plug
has been the same.
no, you plug the camera into the TV.
Okay.
You take a live shot of the jersey,
Right,
and
right.
you show it on the TV at the same time.
Yes.
It should look the same color.
Yes.
I mean, at least to the naked eye, it should be identical. I mean, I can't believe that we can't do that right now.
Putting aside variables of what the room lighting is and what the camera is capable of capturing,
right?
Yes, that should be the case. Any colors that are still presently outside of the P3 gamut that we're pretty good at producing with current consumer displays, those should look like the same color side by side with the real life object on a micro LED that could actually reach Rec 2020. It's still to be determined if the consumer versions we get will actually do that. But assuming they can, then yes.
Yeah. So last episode, Rob told John, who's one of the people who called in, that he would never recommend using in-wall speakers in the garage because of his concerns over gases getting into the house. But a lot of people never keep a car in the garage. They just use it as storage or a workplace, or even modify it into a theater. If you know you're never going to park a car inside your garage, wouldn't it be fine to install in-wall speakers? Do you know who doesn't care what your intent is? Code guys.
Code inspectors.
They don't care what you use your garage for. What they care is that it is a garage. And if you start poking holes in the wall of the thing, they're not going to care that you never park your car in there. it's a garage. You can't have holes in the wall.
Yep.
So, yeah, that doesn't make any difference what your intent is. You have to get your garage basically. You have to have an inspector come in, and you have to get plans, show them the plans, show them what you're going to do. Then they have to inspect everything, and then you can change it into a living space. Depending on, like, you can't do that here in Florida, not where I live anymore, because of flood zones and stuff. Nothing they can't
Right.
You can't build anything new that's in a flood zone, and my garage is in the flood zone. So I can't change that into anything other than a garage. And every new construction in this area, there's an entire bottom floor that cannot be living space. People totally go put theaters and stuff.
Well, people do it.
They do it. It's 100% illegal,
against code.
It will not be covered by your insurance, and it could invalidate any claim that you have. But that doesn't stop them. So yeah,
that's exactly right.
So Tap on Twitter. Unfortunately, Tap has run into problems with his builder during the construction of his new house. Many delays and even some litigation. So now the home theater budget is a bit of shambles. Litigation.
That is horrible to hear, and we're very sorry to hear that, Tap.
I know, man. My wife really wants to redo one of our bathrooms. We have a guy that I trust. I know he's done work for my family. I know this guy will do good work. That's not it. He's also very expensive. And so I'm like, I just would rather pay the guy I know that's going to get the job done right. I just would rather pay him than have to even think about what Tap's going through right now. So Tap says he's already bought his speakers, so that's done. But he was waiting on his projector and his acoustic transparent screen purchase, and also waiting on his dual subwoofer purchase. He had the framing for a false wall already constructed, but now he might need to temporarily use ATV for a while. He bought 3 identical vertical ascend CMT 340 SC speakers. Now he's trying to figure out what to do. Should he throw drywall up on the false wall framing? Would a TV look weird to hang on something other than a regular drywall finish? And what about his speakers? Cut holes in the drywall for them? What about his vertical center? Is it too wide for the false wall framing if he turns it horizontal? What to do? How big are those speakers?
They're about 22 inches wide, so they're too wide for 16-inch on center framing, which is what it sure looks like he's got.
So why don't I have any pictures here? Why are there no pictures?
Oh, did I not add that particular one?
No,
I just had the one. These were.
Are you showing it on the Hangout?
We have seen before. I did put it up on the actual full thing, but not on our Hangout thing.
Oh,
I'm not going to get into trading that. Regardless, it's just a frame. It's 16-inch on center. It was going to hold a false wall. No need to put drywall up on that. Just cover it with fabric.
That's exactly what I would do. I would cover it with fabric, and then I would buy a TV stand.
Yeah, or even if you want to hang the TV on the wall, you can still. It's still 16-inch on center studs, which is all you'd be screwing into behind the drywall anyway. It makes no difference. I just cover it with fabric. I'd put my 3 speakers vertically. Yes, maybe your center is too low where you would ultimately want to have it, but you know what? This is temporary.
Right.
So you just put it vertical in the bay where it was going to go anyway, behind some fabric. You do not put drywall up. There's no sense in doing that. And you know what? Fabric can look really nice. That's the whole idea of a false wall. It looks like a wall, but it isn't because it's fabric.
So you might need to cheap out on his subwoofers too. He was going to get dual SVS PC 2000s. The basement is wide, open, and large. Are there a couple of cheaper box subs that we would point him to? Nope.
If you have to bring the budget down, I would simply just get a single PC 2000 for the time being.
Well, that's exactly what I would say too. You're already getting budget subwoofers. I know it doesn't sound like it because we talk about SVS like they walk on freaking water, so they must be expensive. But the reality is, for entry level, full fledged subwoofers that play down to 20 hertz and lower, it's just about impossible to find a cheaper subwoofer than what SVS sells. It just doesn't exist. So buy one, and then when you're ready to buy the second one, call them up and say, I already bought one. Here's when I bought it. Here's my receipt. Can I get the second?
What? Let them know the situation right now, because we've heard how very accommodating they can very often be.
Yeah. So just let them know, and they will usually give you that price break that you were going to get anyways.
Dual price break, yeah. Well, they definitely will within a year regardless.
Right.
But,
and we should have saved you some money there too. So whatever. Jonathan has a 70-inch Vizio M series that he got in 2016. He mentions that it doesn't have HDR or Dolby Vision, though, so it must have been a 2015 Vizio M series model. He started to find himself bothered by what he calls patchy areas of the picture. If there's a large section of an image that is mostly dark, he says it looks patchy. And the same thing if there's a section of an image that's mostly bright. That, too, looks patchy with some discoloration. Sounds like macro blocking, but that's just me.
I don't know.
Or compression, but whatever. He's gotten rid of cable, so all of his sources are streaming now. Okay, here we go. And he's got a very solid 50 megabits per second connection, so he doesn't think it's just a drop in bit rate causing the issue. He noticed these patchy areas in the past, but now they seem worse. His wife doesn't notice them at all, though, so she's not on board with another big TV purchase. If what he's seeing is being caused by heavy compression, he's thinking that heavy compression would err on the sides of making the whole dark or whole bright areas more uniform. Maybe it would be making them blocky, but not the discoloration and patchiness he's seeing. However, he isn't certain how video compression handles such things, so could we explain? And could we also tell him whether his streaming services would actually be using higher compression than his old cable TV feed? Well, dude, that totally depends on the station and the service that you're using. Because I have noticed
in general, on that last part, most cable TV feeds are between 12 and 16 megabits per second if they're still using MPEG-2. They usually drop that in half and go to 6 to 8 megabits per second if it's MPEG-4. But on average, if it's HD and you're streaming it, they're usually using 3 or 4 megabits per second. So the likelihood of the compression on your stream being even higher than what your cable TV feed was is high. It's quite likely that it is even higher compression on your streaming service.
So that patchy blockiness, a lot of times, those of you that don't know what exactly he's talking about, you would recognize this when you're streaming a movie and like the mountain comes up for Paramount or whatever, and there's like a lens flare sort of thing, like a good color gradation stuff. You'll notice some blockiness or some patchiness in that. And I mean, honestly, this just sounds like compression from your streaming service, and your 50 megabits per second, no one cares about that, man. I mean,
that's the pipe you've got, but doesn't mean that's what they're sending through.
Yeah, that trickle that's sending through there had nothing to do with the size of your pipe. You got the big pipe so that you can get everything they've got and have multiple things coming through at the same time, because you do. Your phone's using it, your computer's using it, everything in your house that's connected to the internet is using it at the same time as you're streaming whatever this is. So you wouldn't want to have the full 50 megabits per second coming through just for one movie. Any little hiccup of your phone, getting an email would cause delays or a drop in bit rates and that sort of thing. So
yeah, I'm not 100% sure that he is talking about macro blocking or compression artifacts. I'm not completely certain of that. So what I would say, because this is a set that has full array local dimming, but relatively few zones.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's 32 zones.
Yeah, and that can have the effect of what looks like a splotchiness in the backlight with a fairly large uniform area, but it's not quite the right size to perfectly fit within the local dimming zones, which is quite easy when you have that few.
Yeah,
that can sometimes create this sort of splotchy looking backlight thing. Usually you'd only see it in bright areas, though, not in dark areas as well. Right. And usually what you're describing in the dark areas sounds a lot like compression artifacts or macro blocking. So here's what I would tell you to do. I think you do still have a disc player, or if you don't, go borrow one and play a disc. I mean, even if it's a DVD shouldn't look like this.
Right.
So play a disc, because we do want to tell, is it actually something inherently in the TV, or has the local dimming, are you having some of the LEDs or have aged more quickly than others and they're dimmer than they ought to be, so you're not getting uniform backlighting when you should be? Is it that? Because it's not utterly impossible that that's what you're talking about, but a disc will let you know if that's the case. If your discs look much cleaner than your streaming sources, well, then it's the streaming sources.
Yeah. So the first thing I thought too was the backlighting. That's why I looked it up. But you're right. It's not that blotchiness. That what you should normally see is like almost a blooming from the lights to into the darks, which is what and I think we need to kind of like step back a little bit, because Jonathan got this TV, when this TV was quite ahead of its time as far as
it was one of the earlier 4K resolution ones that existed,
and that had any amount of local dimming.
That's right.
You know, we have come a long way in the last couple of years as to number of zones that we have. So when I say, "Oh, it's only got 32," at the time, 32 was like you had to spend a lot more just to get 64, which
Yeah.
honestly
Well,
still
it
isn't
was
that
that or
many.
a single strip of edge lighting, right? So it was
Right. Right.
oodles better.
So, you know, his TV was a fantastic purchase, you know, at the time, and the fact that technology has progressed since then does not make this TV in any way a bad purchase. The other thing is that we have not addressed at all is, does Jonathan have his settings correct on his TV? We both know that he does
Yes. Yeah.
because we have worked with Jonathan for about a decade now. So we know that Jonathan has the correct settings on his TV. This can also be exacerbated by just, you know, vivid modes and playing with gammas and doing all sorts of weird things. It shouldn't make that sort of blotchiness, but I've just seen frankly piss poor TVs
Mm-hmm.
that that crush all the black and just make
Right.
it look, I mean, it's awful. And there's absolutely that's absolutely can be the case. That's not the case with his TV, not the case with his settings. So uh we know from our history with Jonathan that it's probably the source and it's
Yeah.
probably the streaming.
But
But
do play a disc because we want to
yeah,
make sure that it isn't the TV itself to blame.
could it be just in his brain where these patchy and discolored areas always there, but now he's just noticing them more? Could anything other than his sources be causing the issue? I mean, yeah, I mean your TV could be slowly disintegrating in front of your eyes. I mean, I
I
don't
mean,
see
all it
that.
takes is some of those backlight LEDs becoming dimmer than others.
Yeah,
Uneven wear
yeah.
is about the only other explanation, but we suspect it's your sources.
Yeah, we suspect that. And you noticing it more, I mean, could be any number of things you could
Mm.
have. I mean,
But he did
isn't
just
this
say he got rid of cable and went all streaming, and yeah,
yeah,
that adds up.
that adds up. The other thing too is isn't this like his summer house or something like that, or it's a place that he
Yeah,
visits?
seems yeah.
It's not his full-time abode. So, you know, you're going to be a little bit more sensitive to it, you know, as you leave, you go home and you have cable or whatever, you come back here, you're like, it's
Mm.
now all streaming and everything looks weird. Like, okay. So he's managed to talk his wife into spending the money to make their theater room into its own separate climate zone for the HVAC system. At the moment, he's had to use a small fan to keep the small enclosed theater room comfortable in the summer, even though the rest of the house is fine. So that extra fan noise has bothered him to no end. It's going to be about $3,000 project. So if you were to get a new TV instead, he'd have to give up this separate HVAC zone project in order to fund it. If the patchiness is the fault of his sources on his TV, obviously it doesn't make sense to spend thousands on a new TV just to end up with the same problem. So what to do? Well, test it by getting a Blu-ray player in there, and
Yuppers.
then you have to decide to either live with it or watch discs on occasion. I
Yeah.
guess.
No, we suspect it is unfortunately the sources. Maybe you'll end up going back to cable. That's still less expensive than getting a whole new multi-$1,000 TV.
Well, eventually it won't be, but yes. If you were going to give new TVs thinking OLED, yeah, that is a
Mm.
multi-$1,000 TV. But then you'd have to change the screen size, and actually, he'd pretty much have to change screen size even if he gets another LCD TV, since 70 inches isn't even common any option anymore. But he super duper missed the extra 5 inch if he downsized to a 65 inch. So get your chair a little forward, dude. It's your home theater. It would be fine. But no, you're not going to change your TV. I don't think that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I
So.
don't see that as the likely outcome. Of course, most of us, if you started with a 70-inch and now you got to change, you're probably going to go up to a 75-inch, and those do exist. There are some
Yeah,
very nice 75-inch LCD TVs. There's a 77-inch OLED if you can afford it, but it's $7,000 dues.
yeah, Jonathan. I mean, this is really again, it's the viewing distance, and
Yeah.
I would be if it were me and it was really I was gonna have to go to a smaller TV, I would bring it forward. I bring because the speaker's all set up for you, so you bring the TV
Yeah.
forward. And
I went from a 70-inch LCD. It was a 1080p, completely SDR only LCD TV that I had, and I went to a 65-inch OLED. And the improvements of the OLED in all other areas besides size were certainly enough that I didn't miss the extra 5 inches. I don't know if it'd be as large a difference in your case because your existing TV is better than the 70-incher that I replaced in my case, but still a significant difference. You would definitely notice the picture quality improvement if you went with an OLED, and because of that, I think you'd be more willing to accept the slightly smaller screen size. But don't do it. Get the HVAC instead.
All right, we're either done or we're going to answer Nathan and be done because I'm not answering these two.
Let's answer Nathan and be done. Well, I'm not here next week anyway. You got to remember that. So,
all right, Rob's not going to be here next week, so no.
I'm not here next week. I'm going on a little vacation with my sister and her family. So
that's great. You're going to see your family and go to the beach or something. What are you guys going to do?
I'm not exactly sure what we're doing. It's still a little bit up in the air, but we're supposed to be going to a lake place. So.
A lake place.
A
lake house. Nothing bad ever happens at lake houses in movies. It should be fun.
It's Canadian lake house. We'll be fine.
Yeah. They'll apologize to you as they're slowly filleting your skin off your butt.
But yeah, I haven't missed an episode in ages and ages, so this is an event.
That's true. Yeah. All right, Nathan has an old Denon 1910 receiver that he isn't using anymore, so he'd like to give it to a friend whose receiver is so old it doesn't even have HDMI. But Nathan's friend would like to use the assignable binding post to power a Zone 2. The manual for the 1910, I think my parents had this receiver, says it's not possible to play the digital audio signals input from HDMI, coaxial, or optical terminals in Zone 2, play using analog connections in stereo. But does that apply to the assignable binding post, or does it only apply to Zone 2 RCA pre-outs? Basically, is there any way to play HDMI or optical audio source in Zone 2 using a Denon 1910? Answer: no.
No.
Unfortunately,
exist. No. When they say Zone 2, they mean all versions of Zone 2, and it's simply because it does not have reassignable DACs.
Yes. So the digital to analog converters do not exist for Zone 2. And this was not uncommon with receivers for a bajillion eons.
When Onkyo added them, they touted the heck out of it. They're like, we have separate DACs just for Zone 2, so you can finally use your digital inputs and play them out of the Zone 2.
Everybody's like, "Oh my god, I lost my mind because I can play." Yeah, it's so stupid. You have to literally have your source plugged into your receiver twice. You have HDMI and then stereo RCAs just so you can play it in Zone 2. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So, no.
I mean, clearly your friend was not using HDMI audio in his present setup, so
but I bet he was using coaxial or optical.
It might have been very well using coaxial or optical, yes. Yeah. But unfortunately, no, your 1910 it has to be stereo analog if it's something that you want to play out of Zone 2.
All right, who we got for next week?
We have Matt G and Adam G. No relation, but those are the two left on the list for Tom and a mystery guest host to answer next week.
Yeah, or we'll see you in 2 weeks, which is probably what's going to happen. I don't have a mystery guest host set up. I don't know who I would even talk to.
I did let you know that I would be away.
And then you didn't mention it again for like 2 weeks straight, and
I
mentioned it last week, and then I promptly forgot about it. Whose fault is that? No one wants to hear just me on this podcast.
Well, probably not solo. Nobody wants to hear me just solo either. You do need somebody to converse with.
Yeah, it's nice. All right, well, we may or may not have a podcast next week. At least that'll fix our bandwidth issues, I guess.
Maybe or maybe not.
Why is our
Maybe people will be pinging the website going, "Where's episode 642 next week?" And they'll be pinging the website and breaking all your bandwidths.
Breaking my bandwidths. That's the problem right there.
Your bandwidths.
Our bandwidth. Our our podcast is getting blotchy. Our website is getting blotchy from all the compression. That's the problem right there. I hate it when my website gets blotchy. All right, guys. If you want your AV questions answered on this podcast, feel free to ask us. Just email us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our 79 patrons over at patreon.com for supporting the podcast. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If you'd like to sign up, thanks very much to our 79 patrons over there.
And we want to thank Johnny for talking us up to RBH and Accessories for Less, and Martin for Googling what I apparently was too lazy to Google. But I was very excited when I read that. And I was like, I almost I jumped a little bit. I was like, oh,
good. Well, Johnny, congrats on your purchases. Thanks for talking us up to RVH and Accessories for Less. And Martin, thanks for helping us out and spreading the good word about the Expanse.
Yes. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.